I would like to confront an inconvenient truth, a truth that cuts deep into the fabric of our democracy, the Nigerian judiciary. For far too long, we as a people have been hyper-focused on the other two tiers of government, the legislative and the executive, but never the judiciary. We are hyper-focused on the presidency, but never the judiciary. The judiciary meant to be the last hope for justice, the last hope of the common man. But is it? Because it is increasingly becoming a battlefield for political gamesmanship. Our courts, the sacred ground where fairness and truth should prevail, are being weaponized by politicians who play fast and loose with the law. Now, let's not mince words. This is an abuse of power. It's the hijacking of justice by those meant to uphold it. And time again, our courts have been flooded with conflicting orders, leaving the nation spinning in confusion and doubt. But make no mistakes, we are not here to be confused. We are here to call it out. So as always, let me jog your memory a beat. Walk with me down memory lane. In Rivers State, South Nigeria, during the gubernatorial elections in 2018, the All Progressives Congress APC in Rivers State produced two governorship candidates in parallel primary elections. A faction of the party loyal to Magnus Abe, senator representing Rivers Southeast, adopted direct primary election, while the faction loyal to Rotimi Amechi, Minister of Transportation, went for indirect primaries. There were 4 aspirants and all seeking to pick the party's governorship ticket in 2019. Abe's faction produced him as the governorship candidate, while the Amechi-led faction produced Tonye Cole, former executive director of Sahara Group. 2 factions ruling within the ruling APC. They dragged themselves into the courts, armed with lawsuits, each hoping to outwit the others. Court rulings from Port Harcourt to Abuja, contradicting each other, making a mockery of the judicial system. And in the end, the APC was barred from fielding candidates in the Rivers State governorship elections for that year. It wasn't just a political party that lost it. It was also democracy itself. It forced into the crossfire of personal vendettas and power struggles. There was also Anambra in 2021. As the governorship election was looming, courts from Awka to Abuja became pawns in a political chess game. Conflicting judges and conflicting judgments flew fast and loose. One court upheld a candidate, another tore it down. APGA, APC, it didn't matter which party, because the real issue was the erosion of faith in the very institution tasked with safeguarding the democracy. The judiciary became a tool twisted in the hands of those who would rather serve their ambitions than the people. That's not all. The PDP leadership crisis of 2016. We had Ali Mudu Sharif and Ahmed Markafi. 2 men, 1 party, and a judiciary caught in the crosshairs. Lagos said one thing, Port Harcourt said another. For months, we watched as court after court produced ruling after ruling with no resolution in sight. The Nigerian people were left wondering, who is leading, who is representing? And the courts were supposed to provide clarity, but instead they deepened the chaos. Where there should have been order, there was disorder. And then there was Zamfara State as well in 2019. The APC couldn't even hold a valid primary election without dragging the courts into their internal mess. Again, the courts were split. Zamfara ruled in favor. Abuja said otherwise. Confusion reigned supreme until the Supreme Court stepped in and in one swoop nullified the entire election. In a supposed democracy, the will of the people was thrown out not by the ballot, but by the courtroom. These are the cases from 2016, 2019, 2018, 2021. Now, if I decide to recount the cases from this year alone, Fubara versus Wike, Rivers State's local government election, Rivers State House of Assembly versus its 25 defected members, Kano Emirship's tussle, Bayero versus Sanusi, EFCC versus Yahaya Bello, Labour Party leadership tussle, then we'll be here all day. The list is endless. So it is clear that this isn't the rule of law. This is the rule of the highest bidder. This is justice auctioned off to the politically connected, leaving ordinary Nigerians as the collateral damage. Our courts are supposed to be the refuge for the oppressed, the downtrodden, and the voiceless, and even the weak. Instead, they have become a haven for politicians to manipulate and distort the truth, to entrench power at the expense of justice. And so I ask, when court orders are peddled like market goods, who go buy you? What hopes does the common man have? Is it the last hope for the common man? When the judiciary bends to political pressure, what becomes of fairness? Now, let me be clear. This isn't just about courtrooms or lawyers. This is about the soul of our democracy. A democracy where justice is delayed, denied, and manipulated is no democracy at all. Let me call it what it is. It's a farce, a facade, behind which the powerful entrench themselves further, while the masses are left disillusioned. Politicians, please listen well. Let me hold your hand as I say this, sweetheart. The courts were not made for you to settle your petty scores or advance your ambitions. They were made to uphold the law, to safeguard the rights of the people. But when you twist the law to suit your whims, you erode the very foundation of this nation. You create a democracy where nothing is certain, where no ruling is final, where the people's will is undermined by a web of legal confusion. And the consequences, my friends, are dire. When the judiciary loses its credibility, so does democracy. When conflicting orders become the norm, the rule of law fades into chaos. When politicians use the courts as tools, it is the people who lose faith in the system. The faith, once lost, is hard to regain. So it's time to demand better. It's time to demand a judiciary that is above reproach, untouchable by the dirty hands of political maneuvering. It's time for a judiciary that delivers justice, not favors, not confusion, but justice. And our democracy depends on it. The future of Nigeria depends on it. And so I ask you, Nigeria, how long will you let this continue? How long will we allow the judiciary, the bedrock of our democracy, to be exploited for political gain? The courts belong to the people, not the politicians, and it's time we took them back. And so on today's show, we beg to ask that Nigerians should do the right thing, as always. So join us today this morning for another swelling, gorgeous time on Breakfast Extra. Not just with me, but also my able co-host, Mizuno Appeal, as is always on standby. Mizuno, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. I've got an answer to your questions, but this time not about the judiciary, because I think the judiciary are actually giving us a list for who to appear at the Halloween party as. Do you want to hear my list? Who would it be? Siminalayi Fubara, Yahaya Bello, Wike, my uncle, or Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
Ooh, now you've given me a list, and I'm going to think about it. But in the meantime, I might come as Wike just to scare. No, you come as Wike, and I'll come as
my thing.
Yeah, I'll come as Fubara. So when I see him, I'm like, Wike.
Let's start the show, Judith. Good morning once again, and welcome. Start of Breakfast Extra for a new weekend. Now, we've got an exciting lineup of discussions today, covering a range of important topics that affect our daily lives, the economy as well, and also wellness. Now, here's what you should expect. We'll kick things off by diving into the major highlights from the 30th Nigerian Economic Summit, which just wrapped up this week. Now, in our big story, we'll explore how the ideas and proposals from the summit can be implemented to address Nigeria's economic challenges. So stick around. And we'll also explore the energy inflation nexus in another segment of our big story. As rising inflation and energy costs continue to skyrocket, we'll discuss how compressed natural gas is being positioned as a key player in Nigeria's transition to cleaner energy. And on wellness, well, we'll mark the International Month for Dyslexia as we speak with the founder of Dyslexia Nigeria. And also join us for our extra special where we'd explore dynamics of employee-employer relationship. And well, we're excited to get started. But first, let's bring you guys the papers, the front papers. Judith, thank you very much for a fantastic
Thank you.
And please don't steal my wiki costume.
I beg, it's too late, sorry.
It's getting,
What do you mean?
It's getting done.
What do you mean?
No, we're working on the voice.
I don't mean anything. I don't mean anything. I don't mean anything. You see, let me tell you something. Let me tell you, you cannot come and tell me what.
You can have it.
Come on.
Let's do the papers now. Let's start from the Punch front page for a Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, and we have this here. Libya-based Nigerians recount ordeals after Super Eagles' 20-hour airport detention. So apparently it's not restricted to just the sports team, but Nigerians everywhere in Libya. How Libyan government media plotted Nigeria's team's ill treatment. We're going to take a critical look at this one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow. So stay tuned all weekend. At the top for the Punch for a Saturday, Pella Javis' love story attracts admirers. And I'm scared my triplets born 24 years after marriage will starve, says a retired teacher. And looming retirement of skilled pilots will destabilize aviation, says President Aircraft Owners Association. For the Punch at the bottom, concerns over CNG explosion, FG begins probe. Did you see the video? Did you see that vehicle?
And in those states, just...
Oh, I hear the welder
wild.
turned himself into the police, however. Yeah, only patronize the certified installers for CNG, please. Shock as Nigerian woman dies month after relocating to the UK, and morgues overflow as families abandon corpses in pursuit of lavish funerals. Families slam police silence 8 months after 5 cops disappear. And at the very bottom, Jigawa tanker fire, residents mourn loved ones as death toll hits 170.
Whew.
Very sad.
Very sad.
I was talking to our producer Matthew this morning, and I was telling him how we have to take a very critical look at the proliferation of, well, this is what's supposed to happen, of trucks along the Lekki-Ekpe corridor, and how we must actually, well, people need to know exactly what to do in terms of accidents, like we tried to do during the week.
Exactly.
If you missed that, well, it was a better Breakfast Central. Go on, Judith, quickly.
We'll move on now from Saturday
I'm
Punch.
joking.
He's
I joke.
of course. From Saturday Punch to The Nation, and this time the very first one that jumps at you there. PDP crisis intrigues deepen as Damagum digs in. Acting national chairman going nowhere, says Wike loyalists. That story is on page 4. At the top there, declared detained Binance executive hostage. U.S. officials tell Biden Gambarian very sick, says Correctional Service. That story is on page 3. Federal government commences distribution of free CNG tricycles to cooperatives. That story is also on page 6 as well. At the bottom there, how 2 teenagers killed their boss over 60,000 naira. That is page 2. You can find that story on page 2. I'm always very intrigued by stories like this, because when you start to speak to the perpetrators of this crime, one thing is clear: their IQ. At the bottom there, Lagos Council chairman opposed bill to scrap 37 local council development agencies. You can find that story on page 29. Lateef Adedimeji, he says, I want to carve a niche playing lead roles in biopics. Yeah, but the thing is, you have to look like the person you're playing the lead role of. You can't be. Yeah. Do you want to play something that is about MK Abiola and then you're a skinny dude?
He can pull it off.
He can what?
He can pull it off.
He looks nothing like the guy.
You know, I've seen this guy act. Very good.
Looks, you know. Looks.
I get you, though. I get you.
Yeah, that's also a prerequisite to play biopics. Anyway, at the bottom there, Hisbah arrests commissioners over affair with married woman in Kano State. That series on page 3.
That's a very interesting story, because you want to know where exactly they were caught, because this headline doesn't tell.
Listen, of course you say. Go ahead.
An abandoned building.
What?
Yes. An incomplete abandoned building.
Wait, what?
See, I told you want to hear this. I told you, you don't just want the headline, you want to hear this story. You want to read this story.
What is a commissioner doing in the...
Very interesting.
Wait.
Jigawa State Commissioner, by the way.
Wait.
It was a married woman. It was an abandoned building. It was, yeah, very interesting story.
Anyway, moving away from that, Tinubu, Buhari, Obasanjo, others hail go on at 90. That series on page 6. Unbelievable. Congratulations to him.
Congratulations to him. Let's move on now to our next daily, which is going to be the Saturday Times newspaper. Troops neutralized 96 terrorists, nabbed notorious Maisaje, 227 others. Congratulations to the Nigerian troops. How my husband poisoned my drink, terminated my pregnancy, says wife. I deal with those peddling rumors about my eviction. Angelo Correa, something about Big Brother, which we're not going to talk too much on. Detained Binance executive Gambarian's illness stalls trial. Now, this is of big concern because we want to also be take very big notes of the welfare of people who we have in custody, which is something that is not really at the top of the list for the authorities.
Right.
At the very top for the Times, Nigeria, the Saturday Times, the Nigeria seals deal with Ericsson to advance 5G tech development. Please let me come back to this after. Let me finish. The threesome sexual experience was, oh dear, files, we don't need that experience.
Oh, goodness me.
And man gets 7 years imprisonment for sexually abusing three boys. At the very bottom, vandals attack 330 kilowatts as Shiroro Kaduna power lines disrupt supply. Now, back to the very top when we talked about Nigeria seals deal with Ericsson for 5G tech. 5G tech, if you want to do 5G tech, how are we faring when it comes to service provision for our customers currently with 4G? And if you've noticed, if you check at the top of your phone right now, Judith, go ahead and check. I can see that you only have 3G, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't want to go
so you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why this rush to advance in technology when we can't even provide proper service for customers currently? A very big conversation we'll be having tomorrow on our Sunday edition.
There's a blind spot that when you climb on one of the bridges that leads to my home, when you climb, if you're on the telephone and you climb that bridge and you pass that spot, the thing cuts off.
Well, that's physics. Bridges and water, the way the waves bounce off of bridges and water is very disruptive, so you might lose connection. So
Yeah,
this is
but
why
what
you
is that
can't
spot?
make a call on the Third Mainland Bridge and expect it to last the entire length.
No, but it's not the Third Mainland Bridge.
It's
like
a bridge, isn't
the smack in the middle of the most busiest part of.
It's a bridge. Once it's elevated from the ground, the waves hit under the bridge and out the other way, not on top of the bridge. So this is physics. I'm sorry. The headlines is what we're doing today.
Moving away from that, shall we? See, I was already hyper-focused. Move away, shall we? We'll go on to the next one.
Is that ADHD speaking?
I know, Saturday Tribune there. It goes, government poll Rex Ondo, indigenship ignites call for her removal. That story is on page 6. Interesting. Chaos as Oyo Ogbomosho Ilorin Road is blocked. Sound appeals for calm. That story is on page 4. Northern groups plot to draft Jonathan into 2027 presidential race. Retired General Northeast government lead push. That story is on page 3 as well. Obasanjo, Buhari, Atiku Sultan, AFDB boss, others celebrate go on at 90. That story is on page 4 as well. Federal government fails to pay allocations directly into local government accounts 3 months after Supreme Court judgment. That story is on page 3. Oyebanji flags of construction at 80-bed facility at Ike-Su. That story is on page 5. Well, I knew that this allocation thing was going to take time because if there's one thing for certain, you people don't like autonomy. Moving on, shall we? Away from Saturday Tribune now to our next newspaper, and this time it's The Weekend.
Yes, indeed. For The Weekend, our first big headline here, My Story by General Gowon. The truth about Aburi Accord, and we fought to live together. I would have spared Ojuku's life if he had not fled. Gowon is a receptacle of history when it comes to the Nigerian anatomy of, what do you put it? How do you put it?
Tapestry of our history?
Exactly, that's it, exactly that. And I cannot wait to actually hear this story. If he's speaking, I'm listening. At the top, how Remi Tinubu donated 2.5 billion naira in 17 months, and the many controversies of Senate President Akpabio. Kaduna Kogi hold LG polls today. And at Jegunle, a Lagos community where residents feel cohabit. What
That is such a
Nigeria?
lie. It's everywhere. It's not just.
It's actually
it's
everywhere. It's not just. It's
You
not
come
just,
out of Manila and look the other way. You see all
driving through Ikoyi. Sorry, it was Ikoyi. I could still see the filth everywhere.
Yeah.
So let's just section out one part.
Yeah, can we just
And then What Nigeria Must Do to Get Its Act Right by Adeshina. That's all for the Weekend Trust this morning, and I'm wondering if we still have time for another one.
Oh, yes, we do. And this time it's first news. Fubara approves 85,000 naira minimum wage for Rivers civil servants.
I like this. I like this. First Lagos,
Yeah,
now
River State.
So we're seeing this. I want
More
it to be a
states.
big competition amongst the states. I'm hoping that states can do better. Maybe
I want to
let's
say
hit
something, but I can't say it.
Sanwo-Olu actually told that by December or is it January, he's hoping to make it 100.
Well, that we're just going to be heavily tasked, but again.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to be paying for that.
Yeah. Ericsson unveils plans for $19 million tech hub in Nigeria. Death toll rises to 167 in Jigawa fuel tanker explosion. Ekiti offers 6-month rent-free market stalls to street traders.
Congratulations. I like that.
Kano
Beautiful.
government donates 100 million naira to victims of Jigawa tanker explosion. NNPC Chevron discover major oil reserves in Niger Delta.
No, we don't want again.
Please, we're
we
done.
don't want
All
again.
right, we're done. We're
Please.
done.
No
Just-
more exploration
We're,
in the
we're
Niger
tired.
Delta.
All right, leave them alone.
Thank you. Where's that conversation about CNG? Let's have that.
All right, leave them alone. How about you start to
Please.
clean up the land?
Thank you. Thank you.
As 129 million Nigerians face poverty, Senator Kalu's 14 million naira salary reveals stark economic divide. At the bottom there, Gowon deserves to be nationally celebrated at 90 Obasanjo. AFDB to establish $100 million youth entrepreneurship investment bank in Nigeria.
Alrighty, so we'll be moving on now to our next headline, or rather front page for this morning. Saturday Nation, epic battle. I'm going to have to read this now, if you permit me. Even as the soft-spoken Professor Kithure Kindiki dusts his suit readying for his swearing in as the country's next deputy president. This is Kenya, by the way. There's a real legal battle that is shaping up in the corridors of justice on the process that saw Mr. Rigathi Gachagua kicked out of office. There's so much about the Kenyan instance that it begs to write a book on. Let's just let you know. And if you've been following the story, you'd see how very interesting it is. First of all, it's a deputy president thing, not a vice president thing in Kenya. I just discovered last week, over the week.
Deputy.
And still on that, Gachagua in hospital for second day, unfortunately. And there is more for the Kenyan Saturday Nation. Kindiki, how a pastor's son rose to political royalty. It's all about Kindiki on that paper, that front page. And more system hitches as SHIF must continue. Not exactly sure what SHIF is. Oh, that's a social health insurance fund payment. That's what it's called in Kenya. And that's it for the Saturday Nation from Kenya. We at least succeeded in doing one headline from, or rather one front page from another paper. I mean another country, rather.
Yeah, there we go, from Kenya there. But pretty much that's all of the dailies that we can take for today. Coming up next, Mazino is going to be by the screen to bring us to the strips. There we go. Strips for today. If you haven't seen it before, you are in for a treat.
And welcome. Saturday mornings, of course, everybody looks forward to the strips. We've got very interesting ones here today, Judith. I don't know if you've seen them. Oh, you have actually. And everything seems to point to your prologue that you gave from earlier today. Let's already start with our first one. I don't know which one's coming first, but we're going to find out right now. But all of them, trust me, are equally as entertaining, but packed with real life instances, all, padded up with a bit of jocular instance. There you have it. Business day from over the week. I will not be running in 2027 election. I can walk comfortably. Why can't you? But of course you can. When you've got everything here, and I'm not specifically telling who this is, I'm just interpreting what the artist says. Now, this person is walking very comfortably with all the, I'm only reading this, the Agberi's Judiciary. Judith, where are you? Judith?
I'm here, I'm
INEC
here.
and the police. I mean, who can accost this kind of a person? Whoever this person is. What do you think about this? Is this apt? Is this correct? Is this the picture of Nigeria, Judith?
It seems like it.
It seems like it?
It seems like it.
You're very tacit. Speak more. You were very loud before. Talk more.
No, wait, hang on, wait. If it's a judiciary, right, I would say that I haven't seen a case where, where the presidency seemed to be to have their strings, because all of the cases that we've seen as it pertains conflicting orders are clearly state issues. They have not been about the presidency yet. So hence why I would say, I mean, it seems like it, right? But for the other arms, legislative, whether it's the National House of Assembly or the Senate, that one, they are that one is clear.
How about the
but
police? You're not saying anything about the police. You want to bring in the instance of the Anambra State elections?
Yeah.
Or is it River State rather election?
No, Rivers, that's what I said. So if you say state, I haven't seen where the presidency is involved there. If it's APC, yes, but then it's executive now. I've not seen it where it's very instructive that it is him that is, playing the cards here, right? It's always been individuals, and on state level, Wike, Fubara, EFCC, Anambra. Do you know what I mean? So these are all so if I've seen a case where it's a presidency that is playing the strings, then I would say, so that's why I said maybe.
Okay, but what about the Agbero instance there, the dog and the very first one on that side? The Agbero.
Yeah.
Can you define that?
Is that not INEC?
No, that's INEC on, that's INEC in blue, and then that's the Agbero in the green, white, and white and green. So that Agbero one is what I'm looking
That's
for.
Lagos State. That one is yes. That one is yes. I absolutely agree with them because we seem to forget.
Business day, though.
Business day is just wild. Listen, I must say that we seem to forget that he was the one who gave them uniforms, right? In his first administration as a governor.
But all in a bit to try and organize.
That's what he said.
The union, So let's give credit where credit is due.
Right.
In terms of
but during the elections, they have been used.
Well, this is allegedly.
I know, we've seen videos, though. I don't know about alleged, though. I've seen videos, though. I've seen it with my two koro eyes.
Okay, Judith, let's move on. Let's do our next strip for today. Now, this one's from the Vanguard newspaper from over the week. You've overtaken me. This is inflation, by the way, the average Nigerian panting and cost of foodstuffs. I mean, so this morning you were there when I was asking the cost of transportation and foodstuff from one of our colleagues and how it's tripled in some places and also doubled in other places. You won't understand how bad this is until you hit the street yourself to see you want to take transport from here to there. Then you start to apply that to everything else. If it costs this much to transport yourself, how much would it cost to transport your goods over long distances? Where does that money go? To you.
Look,
whether you like it or not.
At the risk of sounding elitist, right? At the risk of sounding elitist, I normally take ride-hailing cabs and those e-cabs, and the way the price have skyrocketed.
Oh, Judith, don't. So went to a place with my wife. She had to leave early, so she took the car. So I had to go back home using
the e-hailing apps. Yeah.
So I calculated, if I fuel my car with this amount, it'll do me for 3 days. So do I? I trekked. So I was not ashamed of it, Judith.
Anyway, you got long legs, so it's
okay.
Yeah,
if anybody saw me out there, that's the guy from News Central.
Yeah, it's fine.
Now all of us.
9 days inside this month. Look.
So, no, I'm not ashamed
of that. All right,
let's
keep it moving.
Yeah, let's. All right, let's see what X we have for the strips this morning. Checking out one of the dailies. This one, still the Vanguard this time. Inflation, new petrol price, 1,900 naira per liter. NNPCL, they're giving you guys exactly what you're going to pay. Now, here's the thing. When it was 140 naira, if you remember, Judith, and they said that there was subsidy on it. If they had removed that subsidy, how much would it have become exactly? What is the cost exactly for that subsidy that was removed? Is it 1,000? What is it at now?
It's 1,000.
1,000.
I bought yesterday 1,000.
Are you saying the subsidy that Nigeria was paying per liter was up to 800 naira?
So the reason
was it?
No, it's. Do you know what's taking the price up? It's our devaluation of the naira.
Yes, there's that.
So that's what happened. So if they had removed it then and there wasn't any devaluation of the naira, we'd most likely would have had double the price. So remember, you traverse Nigeria a lot, right? If you go to other parts, the northeastern part of Nigeria, the prices are different. You go to even the eastern part of Nigeria, we're buying at 170. Those people, they were buying at 361 naira, 350 naira. They were going as high as 370. There was also the issue of sit-at-home rule in Anambra and those other states. But the real issue here is the devaluation of the naira, which has also affected the dollar in us buying and bringing here. So there's that.
But do you think it's too late to make everything come back?
It's too late. It cannot happen again.
So we have to keep going.
We just have to. We're in the eye of the storm now. You know what I mean? Like, this is the hurricane. Like, Category 5. We're in it. We
We're
just
in it,
have
so
to go.
Let's just see the other.
Just get through it.
Power
Yeah.
through. Let's check out our next strip. I hope we have a lot of them today. Don't worry, guys. So our next strip this time is from the Guardian newspaper. Okay. Now this is your prologue from this morning, Judith.
Ha!
So
I didn't even see all this. This is my first time seeing all these things, and I don't know if I'm clairvoyant like that.
You spent 10 minutes explaining this. They just put one artwork.
Yeah. So what are you trying to say? What are you trying to say?
That's it.
What are you trying to say?
Next time, try drawing it. Panel recommendations: end SARS, end bad governance. Now, I'm hoping that they can see from home is the cobwebs all over the place. These matters are going. Oh, it's the anniversary for the end SARS protest, by the way.
Tomorrow.
We're going to be talking about that as well. And that's the judiciary there, and the hand with the cufflink, that is the Nigerian, what's that called again? Coat of arms. Well, you know where that's going. We're just going to put a pin in it for now, and yeah, we don't care what's happening.
The picture just does all this. It's very self-explanatory. There's really nothing for us to say about this.
Not gonna
and
say
the web, there's just the continual cobweb of legal confusion and conflicting orders that we see.
If you want a bigger explanation, go on YouTube and check out Judith's prologue from this morning.
Let's keep it moving,
That's
Joe.
it. Yes, indeed. Let's keep it moving for our next one this morning. For the strips, Business Day. Once again, wherever you see free food, Ito. With all these anti-people remarks of his, I hear some people now call him Sen Hate President. Oh, poor Fabio. What can I say? The birds are talking. Well, I think Fabio actually needs an Instagram page where everything that he tells at every seating should be put like words in marble.
Yeah.
Pause for effect. That was deliberate.
Okay.
Because he actually has some of the most profound, reverse profound things to say to Nigerians.
I used to have a deep sense of respect for...
I still do. However, it's a certain sense of inhumanity that comes with some of the things that he says that I find very, very shocking.
When I say it, of course, there's still respect for his office and respect for his person, given that this is how we're culturally, we are as a culture and as a people. But when I say a deep sense of respect, I was living in the South at the time when he was governor of Akwa Ibom State. And my goodness me, all of the work that he did during that time, it was very clear and indicative that this was a man who was for the people, who loved his position and worked really hard. And he did that. I mean, there are things that, of course, that you do, but the sense of it was he really cared for the people and he wanted to do more. And many of the major developments that all the other past governors have now built on was because of him, right? Very solid. And then to go from that,
however, yes,
from that to this that we're now saying, it is heart-wrenching to look at. Hence why I said I used to have a deep sense of respect.
I actually get you now. All right, now, let's see. I think we might have our final one for today, if I'm not mistaken. Perhaps we have two more, I'm not too sure. But this is the Guardian newspaper again. My dear Senator, this is not a nightclub. Of course, you know who this is. We just spoke about it. And you, Mr. President, always talking about food. This is not a bucateria. We've just spoken about it. Let's move on. Do we have another one? I'm not sure. No, we don't have another one, unfortunately. But I was really very excited about today's one because these are very true-to-life type instances that have been put in art, and they couldn't explain themselves better. And thank you, Judith, for helping me explain the third one. Thank you. Because I didn't have to. Your prologue already did it.
You don't do now.
That's the strips for you this morning for a Saturday starting our show. We've got some very interesting conversations to go into. Let's talk about the NESG 30, shall we? Let's do that. We'll be back. And welcome back. Now, after 3 days of intense discussions, panel sessions, and roundtables, the 30th Nigerian Economic Summit has officially come to a close last week, themed Collaborative Action for Growth, Competitiveness, and Stability. This year's summit gathered experts from both public and private sector to deliberate on the challenges plaguing Nigeria's economy. From reviewing government's reforms to proposing far-reaching solutions, key stakeholders have come forward with ideas aimed at shaping the future of our economy.
That's right. And our business correspondent, Petrol Peter, was at the summit and has been closely following the conversations. She joined us now on to talk more about the outcome of the summit. But first, we have a package from her. Let's quickly roll out the package.
session featured Nigeria's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, the country director of the World Bank, among other high-level panelists. The session, themed Fiscal Reforms for a More Secure Future, sought to measure government's current reforms and the impact on the state of the economy. The finance minister maintained that the reforms are working, especially when compared with available macroeconomic indicators.
The macroeconomic reforms are working. If you grill the World Bank on some other indicators, GDP, the budget deficit, the balance of trade, and so forth, they will tell you they're all positive, they're all going in the right direction. So what we need to do is to sustain.
Questions were asked on the attitude of government officials towards its current reforms and its plea for citizens' change of attitude.
The panelists said yesterday that the government needed to show good faith by leading by example. Is the government listening, and which areas should Nigerians expect to start seeing plugging of holes and tightening of belts so that we can see less wastage and possibly begin to see ministers looking very lean as a result of them tightening their belts? Thank you.
It is not reform without end. It is not belt tightening without end. So what the government is now pivoting to what will grow the economy, create jobs, reduce poverty, which is the president's overall aim and objective.
Other panelists also sought to know measures being put in place to improve the nation's spending culture in a bid to alleviate the hardship being faced by citizens.
So once you collect more revenue, the other part of the equation is how do you spend it better? And how do you spend it to address those needs of the population? And I think that's why also it's quite important to focus on the expenditure side.
In terms of the social programs, I think it is the NEL Fund, the Nigerian Education Loan Fund. They publish exactly what they are doing. And I think same with the Consumer Credit Corps. And for the Social Investment Program direct transfers, we are preparing the kind of dashboard that would tell people exactly what has been given to whom and when.
The minister further expressed confidence that citizens will soon begin to feel the effect of government's reforms. In Abuja for News Central, I am Perpetua Fasami-Peter.
And we've seen from that report, the summit covered a range of critical issues, including Nigeria's fiscal and monetary policies, structural reforms, and their impact on growth. But what does this mean for the Nigerian economy moving forward? And how will these proposals affect the everyday Nigerians? And so joining us to discuss this and more is News Central's Perpetual Fasami-Peters. Welcome. Hello, darling. How are you doing?
Where do we welcome you from, back from Addis Ababa or Abuja?
Okay, so Abuja.
Yeah, Abuja. Yeah, there we go.
On and about for 2 weeks now.
Yeah, for 2 weeks. You can see that
Globe
again.
trotting.
No, working.
I've got so many questions for you about Ethiopia, but I'll ask after.
As you know, it's just been
that's fine.
bombarding you. But hey, let's talk about the summit. The theme was of this year was collaborative action for growth and competitive stability. What were the key takeaways from the discussions around this, and how, I would ask, how visible are these recommendations in the current economic climate that we find ourselves?
Well, that's quite interesting. Thank you for that question. So talking about the theme, I think the theme is actually very apt, looking at what's happening right now in Nigeria, because it would seem that there is a disconnect between the government and the people, because the government keeps telling us, these monetary reforms, these reforms we are doing, whether it is the twin reforms, which is subsidy removal and
floating the naira,
exactly.
devaluation of the naira.
When we look at all of those things, to a very large extent, yes, I understand that a lot of persons have said, it was too late. Like, when we did that, it was already too late. I understand that. But what did not happen was that the government didn't put in enough measure. The government did these two things within a month.
Yes.
And that, of course, wasn't good enough for the people. And
was it a month or simultaneously?
Not necessarily simultaneously. May 29th and then June 14th.
Right.
Mm-hmm. June 14th was when the whole floating of the naira happened.
Yeah.
June 14th,
Within 30
2023.
days anyway.
Right. But with that mention, that very day, we saw the chaos and all the signs of what was to come
so
that
what
very
happened
week.
was that the government didn't put measures in place, or the government didn't envisage the impact it then hard on the people. That, I think that's on the one hand. And then on the other hand, there is that talk about, okay, yes, we're doing so much, revenue has improved, maybe foreign reserve has improved, just like he was saying. We understand that these things have improved, but these things are improving at the expense of businesses, at the expense of Nigerians. You're taking this monies away from Nigerians, you're putting it into the government's purse. Now, what is the government doing with it? I mean, from that report, you could see that, to a very large extent, World Bank was also saying that, yes, you guys are doing well. Talking about, revenue to GDP growing from 7% to a projection of 10% by 2024. That's 3% projected growth, and that of course it's not something that happens every time. So yes, there is that conversation around it has grown, but when you look at that money, at the end of the day, it is currency naira devaluation, which means it's not necessarily real money at the end of the day, because that same money cannot give you the same value it gave you 10 months ago, 12 months ago, 13 months ago.
Last month.
Oh, last one. That's another one. So we have that conversation. So, and then I was happy that we also had this this conversation where the private sector were talking about what they were going through. And for them, the naira devaluation happens to be a big deal for them because they have challenges accessing forex. And you need forex to import goods. Nigeria, to a very large extent, even our commodities are sort of primary, and that the primary commodities are influenced by external shocks. They're influenced by, external issues, and some of these commodities, their pricing, they're not local prices. They're international prices. Crude oil international, whether you're talking about any other thing. I mean, these are international prices.
Yeah, like even wheat as well.
Yes. So we really need to do much more. So for these business people, they're talking about the challenges they are facing, and they are saying that government needs to do more.
Can I pause you there? Okay. You said for these business people, and that was what I really wanted to know. What was the makeup? What's the anatomy of the NESG? Who were present exactly? It's one of two questions. So if you could tell us exactly who were present at the NESG.
All right, so for the NESG, we had private sector, we had non-government organizations, we also had government. But of course, talking about government, we had the vice president who represented the president. We also had the minister of budget and economic planning. We had the minister of finance and coordinating minister of the economy. That's Wale Edo.
So I can see the stakeholders there.
Exactly.
However, now this has been 30 years. This is the 30th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, yes? 30 years, and if you ask the local man on the street, do you know about the NESG? They'd be like, what does that do? That's not the question. The question is, how does everything that was discussed at the NESG translate into implementation? What's going to carry it on now? How is that going to happen? All
right, so let me start by saying that one of the things we also have to know is that some of the recommendations from that particular summit have actually made it to the front burner and have been implemented. Whether you want to talk about whether it's the pension reform or you want to talk about the telecommunications, these were some conversations that actually started from NES, that's the Nigerian Economic Summit, and from there, these things then became, policies that were implemented, which is quite interesting, which is beautiful. However, for this particular one, we're talking about a green book. Usually there is a green book where you have more like a communique that sort of has all the recommendations that were made, and that to be presented to the government. And the good thing is that the government is a part of this, and this particular program isn't just organized by NESG. It is organized under the patronage of the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. So there is that synergy there. If it is the synergy we're talking about, there is the synergy there. But the question now is there the will to actually push through? That is where the question really lies. And then coming back to, fiscal reforms, it's important that these things are happening, but we need to see change. The everyday Nigerian needs to be able to eat. The everyday Nigerian needs to be able to afford things that he could afford before, and that is what the government really needs to pay attention to. We understand we don't have a problem with you going on with these reforms. These reforms, I mean, everybody has said it is good, they're important, but you need to cushion the effect of these reforms. How are you doing that? Wale Edo, that question was thrown to him, and he said, okay, we have NEL fund, we have, consumer credit, which is being given to workers. We also have, smallholder farmers that we're giving fertilizers to. And then there are also some other things, whether it is the economic stabilization bills, and that, of course, on the 1st of October, the president during his speech said that would be transmitted to the National Assembly. We cannot wait for that bill to be transmitted to the National Assembly, because when you disaggregate that bill, you see what is in there, you're going to see that a lot of recommendations there are geared towards reducing food inflation. A lot of recommendations in that particular bill are also geared towards, ensuring that there is fiscal responsibility on the part of the government.
Right. Petrol, I hate to cut you, but I would like to ask about, we were talking about implementation and, what is important when it comes to the soaring cost of living crisis that we have now in Nigeria. But at the economic summit, right, what were some reforms that you think, because I know that you've been having a lot of conversations, you're the host of one of the hosts of the Business Edge, you're a business correspondent, you've had the privilege and opportunity to speak with tons of economists, as well as, you know, people who are economist analysts and who know the numbers and understand the statistics. What was one reform or some of the reforms that was not at the front burner that you think should be on the front burner of our discussions?
Well, I think everything was laid bare at that event because we had a variety of, you know, whether they are economists from different parts of the world, and we also had business owners from different parts of the world. Now, the thing is, I feel that, like I was talking about the economic stabilization bill, the recommendations in that bill, coupled with the new withholding tax regime 2024, which of course will be implemented from January 2025, and also the VAT modification. Now, if these things are implemented, I think we're going to a very good place.
Can you give us details on those exactly?
So it's
withholding
the
tax
cleaner
and also
energy.
the...
All right, so talking about the withholding tax, one of the things it actually does is that it makes sure that, you know, some of the deductions that are being done, maybe let's say you are a producer or let's say, yeah, you're a producer, you need to, you want to get some supplies from suppliers. Your suppliers are going to deduct some amount from the money you're paying to them. So apart from, let's say the goods, maybe the goods are worth 3 million naira, maybe at the end of the day, your withholding tax could be maybe about 100 is little. I mean, we're talking big numbers here. So at the end of the day, that money is gone. You don't get it back. But with what we're having, it means that some of those deductions will no longer be made on your money. And I recall that even one of the speakers, one of the business owners that I listened to was talking about how that with this new withholding tax, it means that a particular supplier that deducts about 100 million naira from their money will no longer be able to deduct that kind of amount because of, you know, the new modification. And apart from that, there was also no clarity as to so many things around the withholding tax. And so this new regime seeks to make some of those things, but even though they're not totally plain yet, because I remember speaking to Oyeyimika, that's the MD CEO of Cadbury, and she was saying that, yeah, there is some level of clarity, but even that clarity, we still need more clarification on it. So talking about that, I think businesses, manufacturers are excited about the withholding tax.
So that's for businesses now. Regarding VAT, value-added tax, now for individuals like us, what reforms are they making and how would that manifest?
We're talking about the VAT. We're having zero-rated VAT, and we're also having, you know, some. Now, when you talk about zero-rated VAT, it means that there is no deduction whatsoever at all. No deduction at all. So that's actually good for you. It means that when you're buying something, the things will actually be cheaper because the people who are selling do no longer have the responsibility of making some deductions to pay to government. So what we're saying is that if these things are followed through, prices of goods and services will actually be cheaper because those taxes would have been removed. And you also have to know that for the VAT actually focuses on essentials, whether it's food, health and education.
But how will the government now make money if we're not paying? The
government is going to make money because we're looking at, okay, you know what, some things are luxury. So for these things that are luxury, we're going to put 2.5% extra, and that's going to be 10%.
So we're taxing the rich now.
That's what it is.
I mean, IMF has also been on our bombs for a very long time about our contribution of tax into GDP, and it's always been very low, and they're trying to get it up as possible. But away from tax, let's talk about one thing that was very important and was also on the sidelines of discussions during this summit, and it was Nigeria's competitiveness, especially in regional trade. How does this play? What was the conversations regarding that, especially when it comes to ease of doing business and policies that pertains trade in this region?
Well, talking about ease of doing business, that's really a big deal. That's a big issue on the front burner, especially for even business owners. Even the big businesses that were in the room were also complaining about how that so many things, starting from the port, the issues that we're having from the port, a lot of issues really, whether it is bureaucracy and so many things that they actually highlighted. These things do not make anything work. We have a lot of, bureaucracy that we actually need to address. There are so many things, bottlenecks actually, that must be addressed. And then some policy somersault. I mean, today you come up with this policy, you say this, and then people work towards it. And before you know it, you come up with another policy. These things are affecting, business owners. And then talking about after, some other countries are beginning to take advantage of it. But for Nigeria, we keep talking about taking advantage of it, but there is no real or commensurate movement towards actually making things work. Businesses are really complaining. There are so many bottlenecks, whether you want to talk about customs or even the port itself. We need to deal with those those places. And then, when you look at the cost of finance in Nigeria,
right,
the cost of production, the cost of doing business, all of those things are discouraging. I'll tell you a story. The Cadbury MD talked about, before all of this started, there was this line of product that they started. She didn't say the line of product, but of course,
yeah, I watched it, and then she said, they had to, they came out. So now they're not even meeting the margins, they're just doing products and sell profits,
and invested in, making sure that, they just latched on it.
Yeah.
But when these policies came up, they couldn't go ahead anymore.
Continue.
So you've bought
it's
equipment,
just paused, and they had to hold
equipment, you've paid monies and all of that, but then you can't even go ahead anymore because the margin is nothing to write home about. So while we are saying that they are increasing prices, because she actually said in 2 years they've increased prices much more than they ever did in 15 years.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the increase in that price is actually just...
It's not translating to profit.
It's not translating to profit. The margins are dwindling.
Yeah, but Petrol, we're pressed for time. But what I took away from this response is staying the course and the lack of continuity when it comes to governance. There's no continuity with our own governance. And the World Bank said that we have to stay the course to reap off the benefits.
Now, talking about
Petrol, wait fast.
Okay.
Because we have a minute to wrap up, right? So stay in the course, 10 to 15 years. The World Bank has said that if we stay the course 10 to 15 years, we're going to reap the benefits. What is your thought on that?
Now, you're going to stay the course, that's okay. But you need to cushion the effect of that course on the individuals, on businesses. And that's why it's important that whether it's the Economic Stabilization Bill, the VAT, the withholding tax, or the social protection, or the grant you're giving to businesses, or the single-digit loan you're giving to businesses, you need to stay the course on all of those too.
Can they
if you do not stay the course on all of those, you're going to drive Nigerians...
Can they stay the course? Can we stay the course?
We should stay the course. If we do not stay the course, Nigerians would not make it easy for the government. Nigerians, you saw that, that was actually no October 1 protest. That was not a protest. Even the August protest was not a protest. Because if you continue like this,
more like a demonstration.
People will probably fall on the streets. And when people start falling, then you would know that there is a bigger problem. They need to stay the course.
It's getting Perpetua to stop talking.
Look
at someone who didn't have energy when she came in.
It's getting her to stop talking about business. That's the problem. She never stops. Please don't get her angry.
No, of course not. Now, come on.
Thank you very much, Perpetua, for coming through for a weekend. We appreciate this. And we still have plenty to talk about on this subject. So maybe on another time.
Well, this is where we draw the curtains for this conversation. We go into our next hour. But first, coming up at 9 a.m. on the dot, Mazino's on standby to bring you the breakfast headlines. Stay here.
Welcome. It's 9 o'clock and time for the headlines. Now we begin with security matters. The federal government has said that the Nigerian military requires more satellites to enhance internal security. The permanent secretary of the Ministry of Defense, Ibrahim Kana, made the statement at a stakeholders forum during the Nigeria Satellite Week organized by the Nigeria Communications Satellites Limited in Abuja under the theme Harnessing Communication Satellites for Sustainable Development. Kana highlighted that satellites are crucial for addressing certain military operational challenges, aiding communication and monitoring movements across various areas. The permanent secretary noted that the Defense Space Administration has the capability to capture satellite imagery of routes used by troops, enhancing operation and reducing casualties. In the meantime, the Ministry of Defense will soon establish a joint military command center in the Northwest, codenamed Operation Fansan Yama. The Minister of Defense, Abubakar Badaru, disclosed this as part of an ongoing effort by the federal government to address the security challenges confronting the region. The minister made this known when he visited the Kaduna State Governor, Senator Ubasani, at the Sir Kashim Ibrahim Government House as part of his working tour of the Northwest Zone. The visit was aimed at finalizing preparations for the official launch of Operation Fansanyama, a joint military theater command established by the Defense Headquarters to tackle insecurity in the zone. And in more news this morning, the Lagos State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Tokunbo Wahab, has alerted residents and property owners at the Ogun River banks to be ready to relocate to higher grounds as the Ogun-Osun River Basin Development Authorities commences staggering release of water from Onya Dam. The commissioner dropped the hint while addressing the media in his office at Alausa's secretariat in Ikeja, the state capital. News Central's Bettina Nweli reports.
As a proactive measure against flood in Lagos, Residents, and more importantly, those living along Ogun River banks, have been urged to relocate to higher grounds as the Ogun-Osun River Basin Development Authority, OORBDA, plans to release water from Onyo Dam any moment from now. This comes as the State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Tokunbo Wahab, says this appeal becomes necessary, stating that the water release will help to maintain the sanctity of the dam and its socio-economic implications for Lagos State.
The dam is equipped with 4 radial gates capable of releasing up to 2,271 cubic meters per second during peak periods. However, current releases are measured at 208 cubic meters per second, with only 2 gates open at 12% capacity each, ensuring control and steady discharge.
Floods are not uncommon in northern Nigeria. However, Maiduguri saw its worst flood in 30 years in the month of September after the Alo Dam breached its banks. The heavy surge of water buried half the state capital, damaging buildings and infrastructure. But the unfortunate incident could have been avoided.
Basically, we're talking about saving lives. Saving lives. Even if it's just one life, let alone in the case of these communities, we could be talking of hundreds, maybe even thousands of lives. By 2023, the pollution that we all agreed that we're going to reduce, it had never been so high in the history of humanity. So yes, there's a lot of aberrations. You can call it corruptions, you can call it nonchalance, but the reality is that the decision makers are not appreciating the reality of the situation of making a decision that is not implemented well or not making the right decision at all.
There has to be approaches to waste management, approaches to flood risk mapping, so that and dam management. Now, in dam management, one of the issues we have is in budgeting for dams because they are huge infrastructure. Approaches to constructing roads in such a way that the roads can plug some of the water, when it floods heavily, in ways that it can be channeled back to the Atlantic. In a state like Lagos that is prone to flooding, such approaches can be done.
While the Lagos state government says it fully recognizes the challenges faced by residents of the affected communities, which include Kara, Mile 12, Agility, Ikosiketu, Owode Ajegunle, and Odo-Ogun as reported, the commissioner has assured of constant close monitoring of the situation and collaboration with relevant agencies to address humanitarian concerns, particularly for vulnerable groups like women, children, the elderly, and people living with disabilities, among others. In Lagos, for News Central, I'm Bettina Nwili.
Now, away from that, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has approved 85,000 naira as the new minimum wage for civil servants employed by the Rivers State government. The agreement was reached during a closed-door meeting presided over by the governor and attended by representatives of organized labor under the Joint Public Service Negotiation Council at the Government House in Port Harcourt on Friday. Briefing journalists after the meeting, the head of the Rivers State Civil Service, George Mweke, who spoke on behalf of the government, confirmed that the government had approved the new minimum wage of 85,000 naira, adding that implementation will begin in November 2024.
He has pronounced a figure that is higher than the national minimum wage. He pronounced a sum of 85,000 naira, which is higher than the minimum wage that was prescribed nationally. So as the head of service and a major stakeholder in the labor family, I'm very happy that the Rivers State civil servants have never had it this good since the inception of this state. And that is why we are very happy today, the labor union leaders and all the other major stakeholders, we are happy with this development.
For governor to come against all the crises, against all the things he's facing, against the revenue and all the rest of them, to say he will pay 85,000 naira minimum wage, I think our mind is full of joy.
Outside Nigeria, Ghana's parliament has tipped in favor of the main opposition party by 1 seat following a defection of 4 MPs less than 2 months after, or rather before, the general elections. 4 lawmakers, 2 from the ruling New Patriotic Party, 1 from the main opposition National Democratic Congress, and 1 independent, have announced they will contest the December 7 legislative elections under new affiliations. However, the Ghanaian constitution prohibits MPs from defecting from the party for which they were elected to stand again for another party or as independent candidates. Parliamentary Speaker Alban Bagbin declared that 4 seats were now vacant, giving the NDC a slight majority. And that's all for this hour. Do join us again at the top of the hour for 10 o'clock. Until then, Breakfast Extra continues with more discussions coming your way. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Perspectives. It's where we explore the voices and experiences of everyday Nigerians on the issues that matter the most. And in today's segment, we are focusing on the rising cost of power, electricity, petrol, and even cooking gas, and how it affects households across the country. The cost of living has surged in recent months, forcing many Nigerians to rethink their spending habits. From paying higher electricity bills to soaring price of petrol and gas, many people are having to make difficult choices about what they can afford.
So what did we do? We hit the streets to hear directly from you guys, Nigerians, about how much more they are spending on power compared to previous years and what sacrifices they've had to make to keep up. Well, let's take a listen, a look-see, and see.
It's crazy now. In fact, it's really, really crazy. Before, I don't get to spend more than 10,000 max before. But now, since they have moved us to band A, about 68,000 naira is what we spend per month. 68,000 naira. Seriously, it has affected me as a person. You will not believe it that I parked my car around Towing Street and I had to trek down to Alausa and I will have to trek back. I can't afford to bring the car here and drive the car back there. Now I'm just resting here because I'm so tired. I'm still going down Alausa. I'm trekking back to Towing Street.
We are in band C, and band C is less expensive compared to band A. But the thing is that even in band C, we don't get constant electricity. Sometimes we like between 2 days ago and now, we've only experienced electricity for just like few hours. My generator way the house now, I never on for like for some days now because fuel price is just going up and up. Like as at yesterday now, diesel is 1,200 per liter. Fuel is around 1,150 per liter. So you can see, me earning my salary, me earning little, I can't spend that money on buying fuel. So it means I have to park my generator one side or I have to sell it off because I can't afford to be fueling it all the time.
It's more expensive, not as affordable as it used to be, but to be honest, in comparison with other bands, I think ours is, where I stay, is relatively cheap, much cheaper than in other bands. Because I know of people who live in mainland who are paying maybe 200 and something naira per unit or so. But where I stay is not even up to, probably about, maybe not up to 1/3 of that per unit. So I would say, if you compare it with what is happening elsewhere, ours is cheaper. In Nigeria today, we have 3 groups of people, maybe apart from our politicians. You're either a vulcanizer, a truck pusher, or a manager. Because anybody you ask these days, what you hear is, they manage, they push them, or they patch them. So it's left for you to choose where you belong.
The cost of living in Nigeria for now, it's always for the strong person. If you are not strong, you can't live in Nigeria anymore because things are very expensive. We don't eat rice anymore because you can't afford to buy rice. I'm a soldier's wife. How much is my husband's salary? He's collecting 65,000. So imagine 65,000 cannot buy a bag of rice. And we have 4 children that are in school. We can't even pay their school fees. Life in Nigeria is terrible. And transportation, like yesterday now, my friend came here From Ikeja, Computer Village to this place, 300. But today now it's 400. So you can see every day things are increasing. So we don't know where we are going to. We don't really know where we are going to now.
Concerning the economy, it is not an easy thing to adjust. But whatever it takes is that we are already in Nigeria. So whatever it takes, you have to fly along with the whole thing. If not, it's not easy with anybody, including myself. Fortunately, my children, they have all left the university, so I don't have any person. But what I mean, those who are into it, they are really finding it very difficult. Like this morning, my friend was just telling me about how his son was supposed to go back, and he couldn't because of just the cost. He couldn't go back. He's still around, wondering and searching on how to get money.
When you talk of the cost of living, it's not going where. I don't know how our Nigerian government is going to handle it. But I believe it's not easy for every Nigerian now. It's not easy for everybody, particularly me. But I was trying to adapt up to this moment, but I didn't see any changes.
As we've heard from those clips, the rising cost of power is a real burden on many Nigerian households. Some are cutting back on essential needs. One says he might just pawn over his generator, while others are finding creative ways to manage their expenses. What's clear is that for many of us, because I'm included, something has to give. Well, that's all for today on Perspectives. We'll continue to bring you more stories. In fact, we have plenty to talk about when it comes to energy and how we can perhaps maybe switch from what we know as petrol into something much more affordable. So do stay tuned, because we're going into that conversation next.
And it's time for us to talk about energy. Now, we know that as of Monday at about 6:57, almost 4 p.m., the power grid collapsed, the national power grid collapsed. And so it took about pretty much 24 hours to get the power up again. And now we're going to be talking about the power grid collapse and the federal government's move to regionalize distribution, especially when it comes to power grid. And to have that conversation with us today, this morning, we're being joined by Devo Okore. He is a public affairs as well as a policy analyst, and he joins us live. And we also have Bolan Olojede. He's an economist and also public affairs analyst, and they both join us via video chat. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. We're going to turn our focus to a very critical challenge that clearly plagues every Nigerian, whether it's businesses. You know, millions of Nigerians are complaining, and they have issues about it. It is decentralizing Nigeria's national power grid. Let's start with you, Devo. What's your take on just basically proposing a bold solution to the blackouts, national blackouts that we're seeing in Nigeria?
Well, on a lighter note, as some Christians say that God did, the first thing he did was let there be light after he had created, mankind and earth. And it seems we haven't prioritized what I call the most important factor to national and economic developments. That's energy. Energy should be number one at the top of our list in terms of priorities as a nation, because we're literally going nowhere. The outcome of progressive energy sector is equal and almost directly related to the development of the country. And energy speaks to the petroleum, oil, and gas industry. It also speaks to the power electricity industry, which is actually core to turning Nigeria into a productive state. Most of our problems lie in the fact that we're not a productive nation. And because we don't have the power, we don't have the energy to energize or industrialize, therefore we're not able to become productive. Hence, there's a direct connection to the weak currency, because we're not producing anything to be able to earn revenue as a nation which literally, as you know, power affects almost every aspect of life in terms of corporate and small business development, as well as the jobs that we're looking for, as well as the, what I call it, productive, educational, productive, health sector, productive, food sector. It affects everything. Getting the energy sector right will give us the domino effect towards our country lifting itself out of many of the problems that we find ourselves from. And just to give you a quick statistics so that you know that what we're doing at the moment is not going to work. Let's just take a quick reference of some African and non-African nations. South Africa has a population of about 60 million, and it produces about 40,000 megawatts of electricity, okay? So that's like 1/3 of our population doing almost more than 40 times what we produce at the moment, or 10 times. Egypt, still in Africa, has a population of 100 million, and they are doing about 50,000 megawatts. Indonesia, which has a similar population like Nigeria, about 250 million citizens, produces 80,000 megawatts. Ghana, okay, and this is where you need to see the difference. Ghana has a population of about 30 million individuals. They are doing the same as Nigeria in terms of 4,000 megawatts. Nigeria has a population roughly of 200 million people, and we are producing the same as Ghana. Ghana with about, let's call it 1/6 of our population. Ghana's 30 million individuals, they're doing 4,000 megawatts. Nigeria's 200 million individuals, we're doing 4,000 megawatts. So you can understand why it's not working. It's not going to work. Even if we discuss the challenges, of course you'll have grid collapse. Of course you're going to have unreliable electricity supply. Of course we're going to be in the mess that we're in. And let me reference you. My colleagues in Ghana tell me that they had to return the generator that they bought from Nigeria. You know why? The generator went bad because of non-use. The light was so stable and reliable that the generator that was not turned on, I mean, they turned it on like twice in a year. It became moribund. Now swap into the Nigerian situation. Is there anybody in Nigeria who has a generator that cannot work simply because there was never a need for it? So we clearly have to take the bold move, Judith, that you mentioned in terms of addressing the power aspect and energy aspects of this country. I literally, for one, want to call for a state of emergency because the power and energy sector, as you can see on the energy side, we're having petroleum scarcity. I understand they're making some moves in terms of liberalization of the markets. Because they've not done that completely, we still suffer the back and forth right now. I should be in the studio, but despite the increase in petroleum price, it's not even available, okay? Move into the power sector. They've introduced Band A, which is supposed to be 12% of the Nigerians who have commercial capacity are paying for the bulk of electricity because the government could not keep up with the 3 trillion naira subsidy that was being paid prior to this time. So you can see, I mean, it's just not going to work. We need to directly look at how we use what we have, okay, to gain. We're rich in gas deposits. We're rich in fossil fuel, be it coal, be it crude oil, be it petroleum products. We're rich in so many other forms of natural elements that could help us if we did the right engagements, either with local players or with international players to supply. Yes, please.
Yes, Devo, would like to actually have Bolan say something about this because you've reeled out so much stats there that we have so many questions to ask. But let me come to Mr. Bolan here, who's joining us as well. Now, Mr. Bolan, let's talk about the apparatus that Nigeria has when it comes to power. The minister. Yes, the minister has already told, that's Minister Adebayo Adelabu, he told that decentralization is actually the way to go. Is it really the way to go? What challenges are we going to face if we choose now to actually start decentralizing our power? The national grid might be the reason why we have blackouts throughout the entire country. This sounds like a good idea, but what challenges lie therein?
Well, I think what the power minister is trying is to have other people bring on financing into that space. You see, as a centralized grid, it means everything is on the federal government of Nigeria. And we have seen how the federal government has struggled over the years to do something about transmission. Our transmission infrastructure is very old and inefficient. Even when the generating people, you know, there's this generation, transmission, and distribution. Even when the capacity of the generating companies have increased over the years, that's increased over the years, the capacity of that transmission infrastructure to carry what is being produced is suspect. So it keeps backing up. And if you cannot have a transmission grid that can carry what is being produced and move it on to the distribution sector, of course, the distributors have their own challenges as well in terms of infrastructure, then the entire system is not going to be optimized. So you may have capacity to generate 10,000 megawatts, but your grid, your transmission capacity can only carry 5,000 at a time. If it goes more than that, it backs up. So what are you going to do? If you remember the Siemens contract, one of the elements of that contract is the optimization of the chain, which means we have recognized the fact that there is a serious problem across that chain from generation through to distribution. That if at least we can assure that what is being generated could be transmitted and then distributed to the people, we will overnight actually double the capacity that we have in this country. But whatever has happened to the Siemens contract, I don't know. But I see the call by the minister to say, look, the regions, the law is there now. There was no law that allows it to do it. In fact, apart from regions, even a state can generate, transmit, and distribute electricity today under the laws of the country. So it's calling on those regions to also come and invest in the grid, since the law allows them to do it. That means they will be coming up with the relevant financing to do that. And it will relieve the federal government, and it can be a solution. Will they latch on to that? We don't know yet. But if there are regions that say, look, I want to drive the economy of this, my region, and one of the things that are limiting me is power. So you might have a region who is actually ready. Don't forget that several years ago, Lagos had wanted to do something with its own electricity. So it is not impossible that there are regions who are committed and willing to put down the finances or raise the finances, because nobody is asking the government to even go and bring the entire money that will be required. But you can raise the finances, bring in the private sector, get the finances, and do a PPP arrangement or whatever sort, and get transmission working for your own region. So it is a possibility, and I think that is what the minister is trying to do. I want to quickly also make a point about part of what Devo said. You see, I'm also in Band A. There is no light right now. The PHCN went off about 30 minutes ago. I'm actually doing this video using a lamp. You know what I'm using a lamp? Because my generator will not come on. My generator has not been on for at least 3 months. So it's even an unusual thing. I cannot remember any Saturday morning since May when I had no lights. So there are some good things that are beginning to happen. How we can rev up on those good things and make it to be more pervasive is important. And how we can also make certain lifestyle adjustments because the cost is prohibitive. My cost tripled in the first month of Band A. Of course, we've made certain adjustment now that has reduced it a little bit, but it can work. What Band A is showing today is that there is something that is possible if we work at it. And I hope we can work at it without it being too burdensome on the people.
Now, I have to also ask, right, we all said that regionalizing, the grid will work, and then, putting it at state level, giving it state-based will work. We've seen it done with the discos, the distribution companies. But let's talk about political will and also cooperativeness at state and national level. Do you see the synergy between the two being as seamless as possible, or will Nigeria happen as it always does, and then, negotiations or even collaboration would fall through? I'll start with you, Devo, very quickly, because we're going to our next discussion, and then Bolan.
Electricity Act, when Buhari moved that states can now generate, was a good move. However, that drives the decentralization. I think the cooperation required here has to do with financing. You know that, like I mentioned, the NERC took out the 3 trillion subsidy and spread it across the Band A customers, who make up 12% of the consumers in this country. Now, the intention, yes, obviously, to foot the bill that is required, which lands to you as a cost-reflective price, is to ensure that everybody pays enough for the investors to make a return. Now, what I expect is that if the states go into some form of financing, creative financing in terms of equity contribution, in terms of public-private partnerships, that's PPPs, in terms of foreign direct investments, that the federal government will come through with the sovereign guarantees required to give both local or foreign partners the confidence to be able to give us what we call long-term affordable financing, okay? Now, that will ensure that the infrastructure gap that is required both in the generation as well as the transmission, which is like key here in terms of the grid grid infrastructure, as well as also the distribution are met. So if that is done, then at the end of the day, you will see some industrial level developments take place. That's literally what has stopped investors. You can look at the oil and gas sector. Many investors were not willing to play in the refinery sector, which is our ability to refine our own crude, simply because government was interfering and also fixing the pricing. So you need the same liberalization in the power sector. But for investors to come clean, they also need that guarantee from government that if they put down enough funds to give us like a 2 to 5 year level of output, they are sure that with any change in government, they're not going to have a flippant response to that.
All right.
It's possible. It's extremely very possible.
All right. Well, anything to add to that as we move to our next discussion?
Yeah, I believe anything is possible. We've had even the entire 21 states in the north at some point have had power conferences where the focus of 3 days deliberations by the governors of 21 states was about power. So now that the law has enabled these things to happen, collaboration with, among states and regions should also be possible. Whether it is the Southeast governors or the Southwest or the North Central, whoever could take a critical look at how power has limited the growth of the region, might want to do something about it. And like Levo said, I foresee that federal government, who is even championing this regionalization, will be bold enough and have the courage to have a good handshake with any region that comes up with ideas.
Well, now, can I come in there and ask something about this regionalization, which we speak so passionately about? Do you also foresee a situation where this regionalization could actually affect a situation where people who are of little means are not getting power at all? Because if any private investor comes in and wants to invest in power, they would want to invest with the people that they believe can pay back. That's the rich. So you now have them focusing on that class of people and leaving aside the people who perhaps maybe may not be able to altogether afford this power. And affordability is also another thing. So let's talk about that. Will this affect a class difference in provision, and would it be affordable? Well on, please.
You see, there is, in power pricing across the world, there is an element of recognition of that reality, that it is not every consumer group that can afford to pay a certain tariff. So you have a situation, this is across many parts of the world, in the West, in the East, where some people are made to pay higher than some other people. As a matter of fact, that is part of the thinking that is driving the band A, band B, band C. I think there were about 6 or 7 of those bands, even here in Nigeria, to see how you can make the people who probably have a higher capacity to pay more and use that to cushion the effect of the other people down the ladder who may not be able to pay as much, so that we can have power get across to everybody. Now, the duty of the regulator, because see, anything you leave totally in the hands of the private sector, it could lead to fleecing of the public. And that is the role of the regulator. The regulator's duty is to ensure that while this private sector could come in and make things better in terms of bringing capital and the efficiency of running businesses, that they do not fleece the people. And the regulator, in the case of electricity, I think that is NERC, has a big role to play in that. So it is for NERC to ensure that we can have light and that people will not be fleeced in the course of that.
All right, let's move to our next conversation very quickly because we're pressed for time. Let's dive into a very critical issue at the heart of Nigeria's economic challenges, which is the rising inflation and the ongoing energy crisis, as we're discussing. So in September of 2024, Nigeria's inflation rate climbed to 32.7%. A jump from the previous months of 32.15, 15%, I beg your pardon. And all indications point to the further pressure on households and businesses as energy costs continue to soar. Now, with the removal of fuel subsidies and 3 petrol price hikes since early September, citizens are grappling with the severe cost of living crisis. And in response to this, the federal government has rolled out a number of palliatives, the latest being a 0% VAT waiver on compressed natural gas, CNG, liquefied petrol gas as well, LPG, and their associated equipment and services. Now, the government is positioning CNG as a key driver in the nation's energy transition and economic reform. But can CNG really be the solution to Nigeria's energy and inflation woes? Let me start with you, Agbola.
Well, I was actually at a CNG center earlier in the week because I want my vehicle, to be assessed with the possibility of converting. And the mathematics of whether CNG is the way to go or not is easy. Here is it. I watched an interview on the TV, a gentleman who was at a party at Ado Ekiti. 2 of his friends, he said, came from, I think, Abuja, to that same event. One of them on a CNG vehicle, another on a PMS vehicle. The guy on a CNG vehicle spent 9,000 on fuel. The guy with his PMS Camry spent 48,000. Now, that mathematics is not difficult for anybody to see. You could obviously see that CNG is the more efficient way to go. Now, how about the issues of adoption? Adoption has been very poor. I don't know what percentage of vehicles are running on CNG today in Nigeria. Maybe it is 1%, I don't know, maybe it is 2%. And the challenge, in my opinion, that we may face is the infrastructure for CNG. The way Nigerians are used to driving into a filling station and buying CNG. How many of those filling stations for CNG are available? I live in Lagos, and I can talk about Lagos. I know there are some, but I can't even picture anyone in my mind right now that is close to where I live. So my fear is if the adoption should step up, if we go from 1% today to 5% or to 10%, will the infrastructure and the availability of gas be there to cope with that volume of growth that we are thinking about? There is also the problem of the initial layer of the financing. The financing can be dealt with by a combination of the government and the private sector. Let the government also co-op the private sector to provide financing. See, it looks as if 1 million naira or thereabout is a lot of money to set up, and for a lot of Nigerians, that is a lot of money, which is why they require this financing. But let me also leave with an example. I know someone who uses a vehicle, a Sienna. The full tank of a Sienna now is about 80,000 naira. And she uses one full tank every week. What that means is that in a month, she has already guzzled about 320,000 naira. And in 3 months, 1 million is gone on fueling. Meanwhile, instead of spending 1 million in fueling, she probably could have also spent 250,000 naira. So those mathematics are there. They look very good as far as CNG is concerned, but we must also fix the other problems so that we don't arrive at the same position we have right now with PMS. If the demand is too much and we are not able to put the gas on the table, or the infrastructure to dispense the gas is not enough, then we will run into another problem even with CNG.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for the math, but the math is still not mathing for me here, because I have my pen and my paper and I'm actually trying to put together these figures, and especially for the poor person out there. I have seen a couple of buses in Nigeria, or rather in Lagos here, that have converted, but I'm still trying to speak for the average, or someone who's less than the average man here when it comes to finances. If to convert my vehicle would cost me somewhere close to 1 million naira, and my earnings every single month is somewhere around 100 or 150,000 naira, how will I be able, no matter the reforms that the government has put in place to enable people to be able to convert their vehicles to CNG, how can I afford that much? So it becomes a case of the rich being the only people who can afford to actually live lesser or spend lesser on fuel. So it just doesn't add up. Where can reprieve come? How can I would like
alone can help you.
Yeah, well, I would like Devo to actually answer on this one. Devo, if you don't mind, if you can please help us math this math out.
Let me start on a lighter note again. Someone earning 100,000 should not be driving a car. But let's put it in proper perspective. The maths don't add up, because 1 million naira here, remember when they were planning for it, we thought it was going to be around 300K, and if subsidized, it would be at 150. Obviously, with exchange and all other subtractions, it's come to 1 million naira. So even for the middle class, it's a tough uptake. Now, the masses, okay, generally should be using mass transits. So we know that 70% of Nigerians use mass transits. Now, I expect, because most times when we've pushed for the full deregulation of the oil and gas sector, meaning take out the subsidy completely, I think there's about 159 left. It will push PMS price to around 1112, right? If the exchange still remains the same. However, the savings that government will get, including the increased revenue, okay, or let's put it this way, the 7 trillion naira they've been spending yearly on subsidizing petroleum consumption. The thinking and the rationale is that they will use a fraction of this to now subsidize CNG conversion for commercial transport buses nationwide, okay? Subsidize the building, that's in partnership with private sector players, of CNG distribution stations, okay? So that when these commercial buses take up the subsidies provided by government to be able to convert their buses and either the minivans or their longer buses, or even some of the trucks and transport lines, they will be able to find a place to weekly get CNG refills, okay? And in the long run, okay, whilst you have a cheaper alternative for the mass transit systems, the private sector can, go into some kind of long-term financing, just like we do for generators and solar systems in houses, to be able to make the maths make sense. And this is the only way, because you cannot even put that 1 million naira bill on normal citizens who don't even, either by way of salary or business, earn beyond 100,000 or even 200,000 a month. It's just not going to work. So, like I said, and this is where most people wonder, why are you making Nigerians pay more for energy supply? We just have to learn to stop sucking our mommy's breasts. Why? Because the country cannot carry the costs, especially in these economic times. However, the country can be smart and creative about how they spend the savings and income that they're getting to ensure that the masses are not completely choked out. Remember, the president said, let the poor breathe.
The vote, we're pressed for time, right? So we've addressed the concerns that, when it comes to infrastructure challenges, as well as a conversion cost for the average Nigerian. But the government has introduced tax waivers on CNG and LPG to encourage, a shift towards cleaner energy and encourage adoption of this fuel or means. Do you think that this would aid, or even this mechanisms or these things that the government is doing, do you think it would aid in adopting this faster, this waiver and introducing tax waivers on CNG? Very quickly, I'll start with Wala and then come to Devo, but it's very quick because we're pressed with time.
Okay, I think it will help tremendously, because what that will do is to encourage investment. One of my biggest fear, which I mentioned in my last comment, is that the infrastructure and the availability of gas must grow pari passu with the adoption. If it is slower than the adoption, we're going to have a problem. So that is a brilliant initiative. Let's execute and make it work. It will encourage investment so that the infrastructure and availability of gas can grow with adoption of CNG.
Devo, very quickly, because we're out of time, your thoughts. Would it encourage this?
Literally, this is what the NLC and the TUC were trying to achieve in their negotiations. That government set the pace up front for this transition that is taking place. You can't put the burden on us and expect us to wait to be able to adopt it. You should have set a template on ground by subsidizing the conversion centers for the mass transit entities, as well as the infrastructure for the CNG stations nationwide, to make it easy for Nigerians who obviously are looking for an affordable option to make life easier for themselves.
Okay. Well, Devo, must say thank you. Devo Corey, there, public affairs analyst, who joined us today, as well as Bola Olojede. He's an economist as well as public affairs analyst. We've been talking about energy, electricity, the introduction of CNG and LPG and everything in between. Once again, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Devo. All right.
We switch gears now to bring you sports, and we have the very beautiful Auntie Oyibo. So also Onye Chiku Obaru, she's on standby. Onye, you're looking beautiful as usual.
Thank you so much, Judith. Maxino, good morning to you. Well, let's go to the world of sport right now. We'll start from table tennis. We've got Olajide Omotayo and Kuti Matthew. They have successfully led Nigeria into the men's table tennis doubles, the final that is ongoing right now at the ITTF Africa Championships in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Now, in a gripping semi-final match, the duo achieved a dramatic 3-2 victory over Egypt's Galab Ali and Halmi Mahmoud. Now, this win comes after Nigeria's earlier setbacks in the mixed doubles and the women's doubles event, making it a pivotal moment for the country in the tournament. So Omotayo and Kuti displayed remarkable teamwork and resilience, overcoming tough competition to secure the spot in the final. They will face Nigerian Muiz Adegoke and Abdul Basid Abdul Fattah in an exciting showdown for the final, for the men's double final today. It is ongoing right now in Ethiopia, and Muiz Adegoke, they're leading Omotayo and Kuti, I must tell you. But with this championship title in the line, or Nigerian title, it promises to be an exciting highlight of the tournament in Ethiopia. Moving away from that, let's go to rugby. The Nigerian Rugby League has extended invitations to players of Nigerian heritage based in Australia and New Zealand, who may be interested, of course, in joining the national women's team for the World Cup qualifiers in 2025. Nigeria recently secured victory in the Women's World Cup qualifiers for the Africa and Middle East region, and they are set to advance to that World Series, which is scheduled to take place in the latter half of 2025. Now, to this end, the Nigerian Rugby League has developed a pathway program for players to join the team. To be eligible to play to represent Nigeria, players must meet at least one of the following criteria. They must be born in Nigeria or hold a Nigerian passport. They must have being a Nigerian citizen, that's Nigerian parents. They must have Nigerian citizen grandparents or have lived in Nigeria for more than 5 years. So we're waiting for those players who are ready to represent the motherland. Moving away from here to the grid, Red Bull Max Verstappen, he took pole position for the sprint race in the United States Grand Prix. With the rival, Lando Norris coming in fourth for McLaren. Verstappen, who heads Norris by 52 points with 6 races to go, pipped Mercedes driver George Russell to pole position at 0.012 milliseconds in Austria. Of course, we've got Ferrari Charles Leclerc. He was third fastest at 0.226 seconds slower than Max Verstappen, and Norris at 0.25 seconds off the pace in fourth. Mercedes driver, you wondered where he is. Of course, Lewis Hamilton came in seventh, splitting Haas drivers Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. Norris teammate Oscar Piastri was knocked out in the first session because his lap time was deleted for exceeding the track limits at the penultimate corner, and he will have to start the sprint in 16th. Not a good one there. But let's wrap up sport update at this time. The mixed martial artist himself from Cameroon, he's back at the octagon. Would say Francis Ngannou, he weighed in 5 pounds lighter than Renan Ferreira for their heavyweight bout for the PFL Super Fight in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on Friday. So that fight will happen today. Ngannou weighed at 256 pounds, 18 stone, 5 pounds lighter, compared to Ferreira's 261 pounds, 18 stone, 10 pounds heavier. For that clash, organizers dubbing it as the Battle of the Giants. Cameroon's Ngannou, he's competing in the MMA for the first time in nearly 3 decades. 3 years, I beg your pardon, after leaving the UFC 22 months ago. Now, since then, he has boxed against Britain's Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, becoming one of the biggest combat sports stars in the world. Brazil's Ferreira, on the other hand, he won the PFL Annual Global League in 2023, and he's on a 4-fight winning streak. Can Ngannou match up this man? That's the question a lot are asking right now, but we'll give you more of that analysis on In the Game at 11 a.m. West African time. So do keep a tab with us. I am Wininyechi Obaro. Back to you, Maxino.
And you're welcome. Headline news for the top of the hour, 10 o'clock. My name is Mazino Appeal. The African Development Bank will establish the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank for Nigeria as part of its commitments to supporting young people. AFDB President Akinwumi Adesina announced this in Abuja while delivering a keynote address at the 90th birthday lecture of former head of state Yakubu Gowon. Adesina stated that the initiative underscores AFDB's determination to support youth whom he considers crucial to the country's development. He added that the bank will provide both technical and other forms of support to young entrepreneurs. Describing the initiative as a new day for Nigeria, Adesina also cautioned against the rising trend of migration, locally referred to as Japa.
I know many people may think that getting Nigerians out of here, I'm not against immigration. Don't get me wrong. But I don't believe that the future of Nigerians' youth or that of Africa's youth lies in Europe, America, China, or anywhere else. It lies in a Nigeria growing very well with equitable growth and Africa doing the same, able to create quality jobs for its own young people. And there is no doubt in my mind that we can do that. A global Nigeria will turn Japa, we are living, into Japada, we are back. To get there, I have some good news. I'm delighted to announce here today that just 3 days ago, the African Development Bank's Board of Directors approved $100 million for the establishment of the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank for Nigeria.
Nigerian youth have called on political parties to leverage their competence in advancing a youth agenda for Nigeria. This was during a public policy conversation in the nation's capital, Abuja, which targeted selected young leaders across political parties in the country. News Central's Joshua Emarai has the details.
The United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs says that Nigeria's population will exceed 400 million persons by 2050, with 70% of its population under 30 years and 42% under 15. Despite these significant figures, there are still challenges in establishing adequate infrastructure to support large-scale youth development. To effectively engage young people as key players in promoting and advancing youth agenda, stakeholders say the importance of harnessing the potential of young leaders within political parties is necessary.
We've not really talked about using political parties to push the youth agenda, and on recognizing that, we decided that the best way to do is to have a conversation around how we can use the resources we have, meaning young people within political parties as leaders, either as elected members, either as appointed members, or even just members of the political parties, to put them into a cross-cutting, you could say, social coalition that would together find a way to channel and chart a new course for youth development in Nigeria.
As discussions on youth engagement and advancing the youth agenda continues, some stakeholders say introducing independent candidacies could help diversify citizens' options.
Independent candidacy is something we might need to try, because we've been into this party system for a very long time, and we are where we are today. But then I believe that if we do something different, we might be able to see different results in terms of independent candidacy, introducing independent candidacy in our political system.
They however add that for independent candidacy to thrive, there must be urgent institutional reforms.
These independent persons, no matter how brilliant they are, no matter how accountable they are still going to operate within the existing structure. And therefore it is important we begin to talk about how to strengthen our institutions rather than individuals.
Some stakeholders also urge young Nigerians to actively participate in grassroots politics while leveraging social media for political activism and campaigning.
Social media is good, is a tool for dissemination of information, but most times the world does not end in a keypad. Being a keypad warrior is one thing, and being on the field to do the job, walk the talk, is another thing.
As the call for government to view young people as partners rather than mere beneficiaries of initiatives gain traction, some stakeholders say that youth hold immense potentials to drive meaningful change in the country. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
The government of Gabon has announced that a referendum on a new constitution will be held on 16th November. The new constitution is intended to transition the country to a civilian regime following the military coup that ended the 55-year rule of former President Ali Bongo Ondimba's family. The proposed constitution includes several key changes, such as the abolition of the post of Prime Minister and the introduction of a 7-year presidential term, which can be renewed once. The Council of Ministers has expressed satisfaction with the completion of the proposed new constitution, and the next step will be the organization of a constitutional referendum.
Le Conseil des ministres a exprimé sa satisfaction concernant l'aboutissement du projet de nouvelle constitution. Cette étape décisive a permis au gouvernement de la transition, au CTRI et au Parlement de la transition d'examiner de manière approfondie les amendements proposés par les parlementaires de la transition réunis en constituante. Après le succès du dialogue national inclusif, la prochaine étape décisive du processus de transition sera l'organisation du référendum constitutionnel. Le premier projet de décret définit les modalités des bulletins de vote à utiliser, précisant que 2 bulletins imprimés sur papier blanc seront mis à la disposition des électeurs, l'un portant la mention « oui » et l'autre « non ». Le second décret convoque le collège électoral pour ce référendum. Ainsi, le collège électoral est convoqué de ce fait le 16 novembre 2024.
And you're welcome back. It's time for us to serve you or dish you our extra special for today. is where we dive into or delve into topics that affect Nigerians across various sectors. And today we're looking at the complex and evolving relationship between employees and employers in Nigeria. Now, the Nigerian workplace is undergoing significant changes from the rise of hybrid work models to shifts in employment trends and challenges around recruitment, remuneration, and retention. Our discussion is informed by the recent published Nigerian Workplace Report, which sheds light on key aspects such as employee satisfaction, workplace culture, and the dynamics of power between employers and their staff.
So we're going to be hearing insights from both local and international perspectives to better understand these workplace dynamics, whether it applies here as it does there. We'll find out. Joining us are two very, very distinguished gentlemen, Yinka Owosanya, Head of Research Intel Point, whose team actually produced the Nigeria Workplace Report, and Chika Alfred, a project manager at Nottingham City Council with experience working in international environments. They will help us unpack the key issues facing the Nigerian workforce place. You're welcome, gentlemen. Good to have you guys here.
Right. Thank you for having me.
So I'll let Judith first fire the first question.
Yinka, I'm going to start with you because basically you recently released the Nigerian Workplace Report, which highlights, key issues in employees and employer relationship and just basically the dynamics. What really prompted this report, and what's the key takeaway for you when you were doing this?
Okay, so it's a lot. So what prompted the report? So we did an event last year at Tech Point, which is the modern workplace, where we bring together people working in Nigeria, HR, and everybody in between to discuss topics around how people work and what they do and stuff like that. So it was after the report, then we were like, okay, after the event, let's just do a report that looks at this and beyond just having people come to an event, then work with Old School Africa to say, okay, yes, let's do something around the Nigerian workspace, because so far we've not had any report that really looked at the Nigerian workplace, which is why, okay, yes, let's do this. And then it was a roller coaster up and down, a lot of back and forth here and there. But then, of course, it was released Monday, and so we'll be getting a lot of...
Let me ask you, in putting together this report, what was the key issues that struck you yourself and your team, the dynamics that struck yourself and your team?
So one would be the remuneration rather. So we've done a couple of reports in the past that looks at people, how much people earn, but then it's still being the same thing that, yes, a lot of Nigerians are not earning that much. So say about 50% don't earn up to 201,000 naira. So like every other person are doing 50% are doing way below that, where the other 50. And then when you move closer, go above, see that the number drops.
Wow. Wow.
I would like to find out from Chika if this is what applies in other countries, especially where you are resident, Chika. What's the employer-employer relationship like at your end of the world?
Thank you, Mazino. From my experience working working from where I am, I live in the UK. I'll say the dynamics of the employee-employer relations compared to Nigeria, differ in several key areas. It is largely shaped by cultural, economic, or regulatory context. Organizational culture and hierarchies, we all know in Nigeria, the workplace culture in Nigeria tends to be more hierarchical and formal, with clear distinctions between senior management and the junior staff. Decision-making often follows a top-to-down approach, and employees typically have less direct access to higher management. In the UK, in contrast, the UK workplace culture tends to be more collaborative and egalitarian, so there's some form of equality when it comes to that. The hierarchical, not that the hierarchy doesn't exist, it does, but there's a general more openness with employees being encouraged to voice their opinion, and participate in decision making. I heard Mr. Ayo talk about
the salary scale, if I'm correct, if I did listen properly. In Nigeria, recently we have seen the argument that comes about what minimum wage should look like between 70,000 and what have you. Here in the UK, I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure Mr. Ayo will agree with me that the minimum wage that is being put out here in the UK for everybody working from the lower class to from the lower strata to the higher strata tends to balance with what we have within the economy. So there's a difference when it comes to comparing that with Nigeria. Another thing I'll say very quickly, things like employment rights and labor laws that tend to differ between Nigeria and the UK. In Nigeria, we see how things are going within the labor unions and in the government when it comes to employment, salaries, and other things. Here in the UK has a well-established employment laws that provide strong protection for employees, such as comprehensive health and safety. They take that very seriously. Equal opportunities, anti-discrimination policies. These are things that are in effect here. There are certain things you can't even say in the workplace that we say in Nigeria, a boss can say to an employee and get away with it. There are certain things you can't even say here in the UK to a staff and you get away with it. Supervisor won't dare, how much more a manager, and get away with it.
I was wondering how all of this works to the output. How does it affect what the employers are putting out? Does it help? And if we were to bring that here to Nigeria, how would that seem like?
It does. From my experience, it does put, add value to the output. Okay, for example, I work as a project manager. I've been doing that, for a few years now, and I've been working remotely since COVID, right? And every now and then, even though I work remotely, they tend to ask me questions like, how is your health and well-being? Are you okay? Do you want to come to the office? Do you want to go out? You can take your laptop to a certain place where you could work remotely. You can come to the office if you want. We have a hot desk. We have this, we have that. They check up on me all the time to make sure that I'm okay, because they want me to make sure that I add value to the organization's bottom line. So when they do that, what does that do for me? That makes me feel welcome. That makes me feel that, yes, I need to put in my best where I am. I'm working from home. I've been doing that, like I said, since COVID. I've only worked once hybrid, one of my contracts as a project manager, and I was going to the office once or twice, depending on what, how I want to work it out. When it comes to output for employees, these policies are not rocket science. These people have put it in place here and is working. I know that some organizations in Nigeria, some big-time organizations in Nigeria, are also practicing some of these policies in order to get proper returns on from their employees. I believe that if most organizations, if not all, whether it's private sector or public sector, put all these things in place, right, they would certainly help in trying to boost employee returns in the organization. And I'm sure Ayo would agree with me.
Actually, Yinka, let me come to you and ask you.
Yinka also. Sorry, Yinka.
Let me come to you, Yinka, and ask you about the report, right? It mentions a shift towards, hybrid work models. I'm going to piggyback off of Chika's response. The shift towards hybrid work models has somewhat not worked for many companies, and they're still struggling with the transition. Another is employee retention. Many will see cases like tech, industries like tech and media, where we're seeing, employees exit and having employers have to re-employ and retrain and reintegrate, their staff. So I'd like for you to talk about, the report mentioning this too and what your findings were.
Okay, first, so from the respondent we spoke with, about 53% thereabouts are working on site, while only 70% are doing remote, 17 are doing remote, and another 20-something doing hybrid. But then, so for remote and hybrid, COVID happened, and it kind of like shifts the workplace to say, okay, yes, let's go full remote. During COVID, my company went fully remote. The company went fully remote. But then we came back from COVID and we kind of like make it hybrid. And right now, some people come to work only twice a month, while others do 4. So, but then there is that shift. But then not all companies can afford to do that.
And why is that?
Okay, so there's this dynamics at play. So, say banking, for instance, as much as we are technology is we are tech savvy in the country, not a lot of people still have access to say, let me do this thing on my phone. So people will still rather go to the bank to go and complain if they have anything. So banking definitely is completely out of it. It's not something I say, okay, yes, let me do this thing remotely. Media, for instance, yes, you can, at least during COVID, people were broadcasting from their homes, yes. But then, so there's the office place dynamic that if your work doesn't permit it, there's really not much that can be put into it. Then about employee retention, so there's a trend that we notice in the report is that the older people are, the more they are likely to stay with the company. So the younger folks are like just going to do 1, 2, 3 years and bounce. But then you get to 35, 40, 45, so your chances of staying longer is there.
Very interesting. And I like that you say that. Then how then can companies retain employees? Because I understand that must be expensive for them, having to rehire, renegotiate, reintegrate, into the system.
It is. So the reports, we look at what people are getting aside salary. So then you have people that are getting up to 7 other non-remuneration. So you have the health insurance, gym subscription, and all of that. But then what we've noticed is that there are some that are getting as high as 5 to 7 other benefits aside salary. But then that doesn't still keep them. You see, yes, they left the company after 2 years. So that is not enough. But then, so one thing that the other thing is the workplace toxicity. So why people leave. So you have a case of efforts not being appreciated and stuff like that, and you are working long hours, and then there's, at the end of the day, your remuneration doesn't factor in the long hours you are putting in. Your salary says you are earning 20K, and at the end of the month, you are getting 20K, irrespective of the long hours you put in. So workplace toxicity and a couple of other things are contributing to why people are just, okay, yes, I really can't do this anymore.
Yinka, let's factor in the biggest factor now, this month. Let's factor in Nigeria.
Yeah.
The economy is not smiling. Now, your research, I don't know if you covered this, but what can companies do currently that can help employees? Because it's not easy. You pay double what you used to pay to get to work. You get to work, I mean, after spending hours in traffic, you go home, there's no power, this and that. Now, considering all these factors, that even working from home is also quite a process because you have to have fuel at home, which you might not be able to afford.
Internet.
Internet. And then there's the issue of service provision, which the providers these days have been really, really, really terrible. Terrible.
It's okay.
What can be done now in a Nigerian instance?
So say a balance between the employer and the employee. So if, yes, the price of things are going way, way up. I asked someone to come fix something in my place in August, and the price was around 20-something thousand. Now it's around 30-something thousand naira. Just special. So things are definitely going up. But then it's a case of trying to have a balance. So you have companies that say, okay, yes, you want to work from home, so we give you internet allowance, we give you a fuel allowance in case you need to fill up. A couple of months ago, there was this startup founder that was literally carrying fuel. He was doing fuel scarcity, carrying fuel to go and deliver
to employees.
To employees that are working remotely.
I think I know that company, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, so
it's a delivery company, isn't it?
It's a delivery. I can't remember what they were building something and they need to ship. And I'm like, okay, yes, it has to go and be delivering for. So it's a case of, yes, the company, and in most cases, this company are also struggling as well because we are all in this economy together.
Right.
Just creating a balance. Okay, so the economy does this, or what it wants to do to support it, while the employees also do their own part.
Chika, let me come to you. This report also highlights poor communication and micromanagement, and saying that which has led to high employee turnover. What's your take on this in terms of are these challenges also common in international workplace, and what solutions has been most effective globally for situations like this?
Thank you. I'll say workplace challenges such as poor communication and micromanagement are indeed common in various workplaces, globally. Here in the UK, the degree to which these challenges impact organizations and their strategies, there are ways in which these things have been addressed. For example, looking at it from a global perspective, poor communication is a widespread issue in many countries, as we know, and an industry, and it can result in misunderstanding or decreased productivity. Now, in the UK here, communication breakdown still occur, especially within large organizations, and they tend to put in some things in place in order to make that not to cause any problem. So it's just effective solutions could be the adoption of digital communication tools. Remember, I did say to you that I've been working from home since 2020, and they made sure once they provided me with the tools, the laptop, my ergonomic desk and chairs and everything that I use to work from home to make sure that I'm comfortable. We tend to have regular meetings and feedback loops. So these things tend to bridge that communication gap. They need to know how I'm doing. They need to know if I need anything. They need to know if there's any challenges within my work or my task that I need to talk about, so they could bring somebody in. If I have any technical issues, they tend to find a way to make sure they reach out to me. And they also provide training. I can count the number of trainings I've done since I've lived here. Communication training, this training and that training. They provide these tools and these platforms for us to take loads of trainings when it comes to things that has to do with, for example, communication.
Let's quickly
micromanagement. Looking at
sorry, because we're pressed for time. Let's quickly prefer solutions, right? If a Nigerian company were to look into going international, giving all of this, the trainings, the continually touching base with, the higher ups and also your team lead, what will be your solutions, if they're going to go global? What are the best practices should they ought to take? Very quickly, because we're pressed for time.
Yeah, promoting autonomy is one. It's very important to promote autonomy. Global companies are realizing the importance of empowering employees. So that's one. Another point I'll make is improving communication channels across the workplace. Things like we're using Zoom right now, Teams and other platforms and other channels of improving communication. They should focus on leadership development. That's another key area. I know a lot of leadership training that I have done in the past up to today. Then employee well-being programs. In the UK, employees' well-being has become a top priority, especially in the light of mental health these days. So they tend to want to check on everybody. So these are some of the points, based on time, I'll say that could be put in place. They're not rocket science. They're simple things that organizations can put in place in order to get good turnover.
Not rocket science, indeed. Chika, I want to say thank you very much. I also want to say thank you very much.
I was going to ask him about
the studio here with us.
Thank you.
I'm sure Yinka actually agrees, don't you, Yinka?
I mean, when it comes to the recommendations that you made, just very quickly, okay, we're out of time.
Yes,
I was going to ask for recommendations, but Yinka wants to hear many thanks as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's a break now. We'll be back with our final segment for wellness. And you're welcome. It's time for Wellness Central, where we explore important topics in health and wellness. And October is recognized globally as the International Month for Dyslexia, a time to raise awareness about this learning difficulty and advocate for better understanding, diagnosis, and also support. Now, dyslexia affects millions of people worldwide, including children and adults here in Nigeria especially. Despite its prevalence, there is still very limited awareness and support for those who live with dyslexia in the country.
And so today we are going to be discussing this, and to do that we're joined by Dr. Adrian Tikolo. She's the founder of Dyslexia Nigeria, an organization committed to raising awareness, providing education and supporting those affected by dyslexia. We'll be discussing the challenges faced by individuals with dyslexia in Nigeria and the progress being made to support them. Doctor, welcome to the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Where's that?
It's actually a Yoruba name. It's from Ondo State.
Okay. Wow, interesting.
That's beautiful.
I never knew. Anyway, I know Koloko, and that's Delta. So yeah, there we go.
Dakolo.
Dakolo as well.
But,
yeah,
it just sounds the same, but it's not the same.
Okay. Well, welcome to the program. Let's
Thank
get
you so
started,
much.
shall we? Just help our audience to understand, what exactly is dyslexia and how one can get dyslexia. What is dyslexia?
Demystify it.
Thank you. So dyslexia is a learning difference. It's a way the brain processes language, and it shows up as a difficulty with reading and writing and spelling. All those areas of language, so speech, spelling, writing, composition, comprehension, all of those areas, and sometimes memory and organization. But it also comes with strengths. So the people would also have, strengths in other areas like problem solving, creativity, thinking outside the box and all of that. So some strength and some difficulty, but usually centered around language.
So while you're trying to demystify it, does this also include, this is just letters, is it? Or does it include numbers as well?
Well, it doesn't include numbers. So numbers is another type of learning difference. So you could have dyscalculia. So this is difficulty with. So dyslexia is difficulty with words, lexia word.
Okay.
Dyscalculia is difficulty with numbers. So there are also people that have dyscalculia, but they can co-occur. So you can have a difficulty with letters and numbers at the same time.
And how exactly does it happen? Why does it happen? You say it's an individual thing, and you also refer to it as not a disability. So what exactly is it?
So it's a difference. So imagine the way we all look different physically. We're also different in the ways that our brains process information. And so for those that have dyslexia, they're sort of like more right-brained. That's what I'll say. So the brain has two hemispheres, okay, two sides to it. And both sides are, used for different things. So some people are more, sort of tilt more towards the right side of the brain for processing language. And so that side of the brain is more creative, thinking outside the box, intuitive thinking and all of that. And the left side is more analytical, language processing, mathematics and things like that. So if you tend to use more of the right side of your brain, then you have a tendency to be more right brain and to do those things easier than those for the left side of the brain. It's largely inherited. Okay, it's a gene that you inherit from a parent or grandparents.
So it has nothing to do with your ability, with your, Judith, help me out. When you're in school and you're not good at school or not good at...
But that is some of the consequences of having dyslexia.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not intelligent, does it?
Oh, no. Dyslexia has nothing to do with intelligence.
Right. So then how, I'm watching this from home, how about viewers, just watching as a parent, what are the signs, and even as an educator, what are the signs that you need to look out for to say, okay, maybe this child has dyslexia? I knew with the family member when the person kept mixing P for Q, the small letter P and Q, and whenever they'd write, that's why I was like, this is most likely dyslexia. But how should parents know?
Thank you, and that's probably one of the signs. Now, dyslexia shows up slightly differently across the lifespan because it is who you are, it's inherited, so it could have different signs across the lifespan. But when the child is in preschool and nursery, you'd find that he has difficulty rhyming, so the nursery rhymes, have difficulty with that. You'll have difficulty with learning his alphabet and the alphabet signs. You'll have difficulty with so marrying the sounds with the letters. That's the main difficulty you'd find. Sometimes they can be ambidextrous, so using the right hand and using the left hand at the same time. And then they would mix up the alphabets, okay, B's and D's.
You have to stop now because it's like as if you're talking about someone I know. Who might be me, I don't know, because I'm ambidextrous. I used to switch my letters this way or that from a very young age, and I had difficulty with specific letters, specific sounds and letters. So is it something that you can go on to be cured of, or is it something you live with your entire life?
Right, so I wouldn't use the word cured because then it presupposes a disease. It's not. Okay. It's a state of being. So yes, you can alleviate, almost completely eliminate the difficulty that may come with it, but you cannot stop being dyslexic, the same way you can't change the color of your eyes, for instance.
I'm sure that there's stigma with this and, you know, just cultural norms that have
Absolutely.
plagued people who either, you know, like you described, had issues, learning issues, and they've had issues trying to integrate into classroom in the system, and also had it difficult with teachers. What has it been like for your foundation, just raising awareness about this?
It's been an uphill task, I have to say. A lot of teachers are unaware of the signs of dyslexia. That's a problem. Also parents, they don't know the signs. And so when a child is struggling, they're wondering, you're this smart, you're quite articulate, they're usually very good verbally, they're good communicators, but then you can't read, really. So you're either too playful, you're dumb, you know, you're watching too much TV. There's
or they're
always
just distracted.
Or you're distracted or all of that. So they're not providing the support. They don't know the signs. They're just labeling the child, you know. So it's really been an uphill task. I'd visit some schools, and the school owner would say, oh, no, we don't have any dyslexic individuals here. And dyslexia occurs 1 in 5 persons.
Oh, wow, is that prevalent?
20% of any population is dyslexic.
So why does it seem we're hiding it? Why does it seem we're running away? Why is that stigma, like Judith just referred to? Why is there that stigma?
Because we also have a culture that says you're an olodo if you can't read. Right. We have a society or a world that has equated intelligence to reading and learning to read. And so you want to hide away. I mean, you're with your peers, you can't read a simple book, a simple sentence. It's difficult. You're spelling and the spelling errors and all of it. Everybody wants to shy away. They don't want to be seen to be the one that is dumb.
Everyone wants an intelligent child. My child is intelligent.
Exactly, my child is smart.
What's the effect on the child who's being subjected to these, what do you call them?
A lot of psychological, mental health issues, you know, and that is why there's a huge connection between dyslexia and mental health, because there's a lot of frustration, anger, there's juvenile delinquency. I mean, I need help, you don't know, you don't see it, you're not providing help. There's a lot of frustration. There's misbehavior, there's stress, there's anxiety, there's depression, even in children, let alone adults, of course.
What are some, you know, when it comes to support, right? I think that one of the things that I learned was that support groups are very important for children like these, because they don't seem to see them, so like you said, 1 in 5, 20%, they don't see themselves. Oftentimes, they don't even know what the signs are, because there are some dyslexic children that have masked their signs, right? And so in your work, what has been the most difficult thing in terms of providing support, either for the families or for the children and for the schools?
Well, the most difficult thing I've found is the lack of awareness with teachers, because teachers are the ones in the face of this in school.
Right.
So teachers are not trained, they're unaware, so they do not know how to support the child. And when the child does not receive support, the difficulties become even more. So that's the main thing. Now, if teachers were trained, imagine the impact one teacher would have on as many children. You're seeing this child every day, all the time. Half the time, the parents don't know what is going on anyway. So teachers not being trained, not being unaware is one of the main stumbling blocks. But beyond that, there's also the lack of resources, lack of awareness, you know, that hinders all of that.
So there are no ready available resources to support even teachers. Is it a case of lack of funding, or is it just a case of not even knowing?
A lack of attention.
It's not really knowing. I mean, you don't need, you know, the most expensive resource to remediate dyslexia. You need to focus, you need to give one-on-one tuition in some cases, you need to pay attention. You know, you need to teach in a slightly different way, you need to differentiate. They're easy things to do, but you don't do that when you don't know it. You can't solve a problem you don't know exists.
So let's talk about this remediation. Exactly how does it, you know, what form does it take?
So usually would say schools should do a sort of universal screening. So identify those that are showing the signs of dyslexia already. And then this would mean you're doing phonological awareness training. So just one-on-one, linking letters and sounds and doing those lessons is largely educational. You know, phonics training, you're doing some memory strategies, you're working around strategies with writing and comprehension. It's just really teaching the child at their pace with different materials, multi-sensory teaching.
So when you identify the children, it's not a case of trying to help alleviate the issue, is it? It's changing your way or a means of teaching them.
Absolutely.
So it's not the kids now, it's actually the authority.
It's never the kid. It's never the kid. Imagine you have a plant in a pot and the plant is withering. You'd never think it was the plant. You think, oh, is it the soil? Do I need to put more water? Should I take it out in the sun? It's always the environment around the plant. It's the same with the child. It's never the child. It's always the environment around the child, the type of teaching, the type of understanding, the resources you provide, the time that you use into it. Those are the important things.
And when you propose these to schools, how do they take it when parents find out that their kids are dyslexic? How do you convince them that these are the methods to go with?
I mean, every parent wants the best for their child. First, you need to prove that you understand what you're doing. You don't just tell a parent, well, your child isn't doing well in school, and you have no solution, you don't know what it is. So once you know what it is, you show parents the signs. I mean, look, you already said, this sounds like me. A parent would know his child. You tell them, we notice this, this, this. Yes, that sounds like my child. What are we going to do? So the school must be equipped with the knowledge. You must be aware. You must have basic training in understanding dyslexia and how to remediate. You must be ready to provide the resources and provide the environment, which is important.
What if the parents are reluctant? Because that's a factor as well. Parents choosing, I rebuke it to my child in the mighty name of Jesus. I pray for you. You will be. There's always that as well.
What you often get.
I'm happy if parents pray. Prayer is good, but it's not going to work. In this instance, you need to take action. And like I said, if you tell parents the signs, they recognize that, yes, I've seen this in my child. And they're more open. But usually, I think what they kick against is when you're doing a universal screening. Why are you screening my child? I mean, my child has nothing. But we've still seen some signs. But why are you screening I don't want to have anything to do with screening.
Let's talk about, because we're pressed for time, let's talk about, the technological advancements that we've seen, right? And the place of dyslexia in Nigeria. What have you been doing? What is Dyslexia Nigeria been doing lately since its inception in just trying to address this? And have you been able to adopt technology in your strategy when it comes to remedying?
Oh, absolutely. We used to have in-person trainings, for instance, for teachers, and would get inquiries from Kano, Kaduna, and places like that, and we just couldn't go there. So we had to adopt technology. We do have a platform, learning platform now, where we have courses that teachers can take in their own time, for instance. There's also the provision of other assistive technologies, so reading pens that help. We do visit schools to talk about dyslexia, raise awareness. We do free screenings. This month we're having some free screening and free trainings. Like I said, there's some things that will help if government, for instance, provided the environment, but we're doing what we can.
Right. And lastly, for final words for our viewers at home and those that are watching and who's seen the signs and feel like, maybe my child is, but I'm too expensive, it's too expensive. What can they do at home right now to aid their children?
First, don't be in denial. Take an action, take a step. So speak to the school. Yes, speak to the school. Be your child's advocate. Go to the school. I've noticed this. What can we do? Can we get a basic screening? It doesn't have to be, full diagnostic assessment. Just to say, is this child at risk? And then what are the materials I need to buy? What do I need to do? Take action. Don't say it's not this, it's not that. Don't live in denial.
Action. That's beautiful.
Take action.
I just wanted to say, I'm father to a almost 9-year-old. She'll be 9 years next week. And she's an impeccable speller. And sometimes when I look at her, I'm like, I'm so far apart from what this girl is when I was a kid. So can I make a pledge right now? Whatever you need to make this word louder, I would like to be a part of it. And
oh, my days, I'm about to fall out of my chair.
Don't. But yes, because I feel a special connection to this cause.
Thank you so
yes,
much.
That's how I'm going to end the show here today with Dr. Tikolo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Yes, thank you for carrying this cause on your shoulders. We do need people like you to help all the children out there and all the parents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the platform as well. It's very important. Thank you.
Education is important, and most likely and very importantly is when you see the signs, it's very better that you become the advocate for your child and do not be in denial. And this is what brings us to a court, and many thanks to our guest here, Dr. Adrian Tikolo. She is the founder of Dyslexia Nigeria, and she's been talking to us about everything that concerns dyslexia, what you need to know, the signs, how to detect, and also advocating for the children, and also a call to action for our educationists in Nigeria. This is why we draw the curtains for today's show. Many thanks to all of our viewers for watching from home. We'll see you tomorrow. All right? It's bye from us.
Bye-bye, everybody. Catch you guys tomorrow.